The language of kindness. The morning sun streamed through the pristine windows of the Thompson family kitchen, casting warm golden rays across the marble countertops and illuminating the scene that had become as familiar as breathing itself. Sarah Martinez wiped her hands on her apron, a gentle smile playing across her lips as she watched the controlled chaos that was breakfast time with 4 young boys. "Buenos dias, Ms. Pequeños," she called out in her native Spanish, the words flowing like honey as she placed steaming bowls of oatmeal before each child. The boys, ranging in age from 4 to 8, responded with a chorus of, "Good morning, Miss Sarah," in their eager, high-pitched voices. Sarah had been working as a nanny for the Thompson family for 3 years now, ever since she had moved to suburban Connecticut from her hometown of San Antonio, Texas. What had started as a temporary position while she pursued her teaching degree had blossomed into something much more meaningful: a second family, a home away from home, and a daily reminder that kindness truly was a universal language. "Tommy, sweetheart, let's try to keep the oatmeal in the bowl, see?" she said gently, reaching over to wipe a blob of breakfast from the 6-year-old's chin. Her voice carried the musical lilt of her Mexican heritage, softened by years of speaking English with the children. The kitchen itself was a testament to modern luxury: gleaming white cabinets stretched from floor to ceiling, topped with pristine quartz countertops that reflected the light from the pendant lamps hanging overhead. Stainless steel appliances hummed quietly, and the large island where the family gathered each morning served as the heart of their daily routines. Yet despite all the material wealth surrounding them, Sarah knew that the true richness in this house came from the moments of connection, the small acts of care, and the patience required to nurture 4 growing souls. "Miss Sarah," piped up Jake, the oldest at 8, "can you tell us the story about the kindness tree again?" But this time in Spanish and English like last time. Sarah's heart warmed at the request. The kindness tree was a story she had created during her first month with the family, born from a particularly challenging day when the boys had been especially difficult, testing boundaries and pushing limits as children do. Instead of raising her voice or implementing harsh consequences, Sarah had gathered them around the kitchen table and spun a tale that would become their family legend. "Por supuesto, mi amor," she replied, settling into the chair beside them. "Of course, my love. But first, let's make sure everyone has eaten enough to grow big and strong like the kindness tree." The story had evolved over the years, incorporating lessons the children needed to learn, challenges they were facing, and dreams they were nurturing. It was told in a beautiful mixture of Spanish and English, what linguists called code switching, but what Sarah simply called speaking from the heart. She had learned that children absorbed language not through rigid instruction, but through emotional connection and meaningful interaction. "Once upon a time," she began, her voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of a born storyteller, "there was a little seed, una semillita pequeña, that fell in the middle of a busy city. The seed was scared because everything around it was hard concrete and tall buildings that blocked the sun. 4-year-old Michael, the youngest, leaned forward with wide eyes, his spoon forgotten in his bowl. Despite hearing this story dozens of times, he remained captivated by Sarah's animated telling. But then, Sarah continued, gesturing with her hands to paint the picture, a little girl noticed the seed. She didn't speak the same language as the seed, ella hablaba diferente, but she understood something important. Do you remember what she understood? That kindness doesn't need words," chorused the boys in unison, their faces bright with the joy of participation. "Exacto. Exactly right." So the little girl brought water for the seed, and she spoke to it in her language, which was Mandarin Chinese. She said, "Ni hao, xiao zongzi," hello, little seed. And even though the seed didn't understand the words, it understood the kindness in her voice. Sarah paused to help 6-year-old Sam tie his shoe, her fingers working quickly while she continued the narrative without missing a beat. This was the dance of caregiving she had perfected, meeting immediate needs while nurturing minds and hearts simultaneously. "Then a boy came by," she went on, "and he spoke Arabic. He said, 'Alan wa salan, zara sarira,' welcome, little seed," and he shared his sandwich crumbs to give the seed nutrients. After him came an elderly woman who spoke Vietnamese. She said, "Chao em, hat giong no," hello, little seed, and she used her cane to dig a small space around the seed so it could grow. The boys listened intently, occasionally interrupting with questions or comments in the way children do, their natural curiosity adding richness to the storytelling experience. Sarah welcomed these interruptions, knowing that engagement was more valuable than perfect attention. Day by day, more people discovered the little seed. There was a teenager who spoke ASL, American Sign Language, and she signed, "Hello, beautiful seed," with her hands while creating shade for it with an umbrella. A construction worker who spoke Portuguese stopped by every morning on his way to work, saying, "Bom dia, sementina," good morning, little seed, and he built a small fence to protect it. As Sarah spoke, she unconsciously demonstrated some of the signs and gestures, turning the story into a multi-sensory experience that engaged the children's bodies as well as their minds. This was something she had learned from her grandmother, who had taught her that stories lived not just in words, but in movement, expression, and emotion. "You know what happened next?" Sarah asked, though she knew they all knew the answer. "The seed grew into a tree," shouted Tommy, nearly bouncing out of his chair with excitement. "See, Hero, not just any tree, but a special tree that grew different kinds of fruit. And do you know why? Because it was fed by kindness in many languages," said Jake proudly, demonstrating the lesson he had internalized over countless retellings. "Exactly right, M.I. Corazon. The tree grew apples for the Chinese girl, dates for the Arabic boy, dragon fruit for the Vietnamese grandmother, oranges for the Portuguese construction worker, and berries for everyone else who had shown it kindness. And when people from all over the world came to taste the fruit, they discovered something magical." Sarah stood up to begin clearing the breakfast dishes, but the boys remained seated, still caught up in the familiar but beloved conclusion of the story. "The tree could understand every language," declared Michael, his 4-year-old voice filled with wonder as if he were hearing this revelation for the first time. "And more than that," Sarah added, "running warm water in the sink, everyone who ate from the tree gained the ability to understand that kindness sounds the same in every language. Whether someone says, 'Be kind,' in English, say 'amable,' in Spanish, 'you Sean,' in Chinese, or 'kun snil,' in Norwegian, the feeling in the heart is exactly the same." The story served multiple purposes in the Thompson household. For the children, it was entertainment, education, and moral instruction wrapped into one. For Sarah, it was a daily reminder of why she had chosen to dedicate her life to caring for others, and a way to honor her own multicultural background while sharing it with the next generation. As the boys finally finished their breakfast and began the familiar choreography of preparing for school, backpacks gathered, teeth brushed, shoes located and tied, Sarah reflected on how this simple morning routine had become a cornerstone of her life in America. She had arrived in this country with big dreams but limited resources, carrying little more than her education, her work ethic, and her grandmother's stories. The transition hadn't been easy. Despite her excellent English, there were cultural nuances she had to learn, professional expectations to navigate, and moments of homesickness that could overwhelm her without warning. The Thompson family had become her anchor during those difficult early months, not just as employers, but as people who genuinely valued what she brought to their home. Mrs. Thompson, a busy executive who traveled frequently for work, had been particularly supportive. "Sarah," she had said during one of their weekly check-ins, "I want you to know that you're not just helping us with childcare. You're giving my boys something I could never give them myself, the gift of seeing the world through different eyes, of understanding that there are many ways to express love and care." Mr. Thompson, a software engineer who worked long hours but always made time for family dinners, had echoed this sentiment. "The boys don't just see you as their nanny," he had told her. "They see you as family. And frankly, so do we." This acceptance had allowed Sarah to bring her full self to her work. She shared not just her language, but her culture, her traditions, and her worldview. She taught the boys simple phrases in Spanish, helped them understand Mexican holidays like Dia de los Muertos, and showed them how to make her grandmother's recipe for tres leches cake. But the cultural exchange flowed both ways. Through the Thompson family, Sarah had experienced her first New England autumn, learned to appreciate baseball, though she still preferred soccer, and discovered the joy of small-town 4th of July parades. She had attended Jake's Little League games, cheering in enthusiastic Spanglish that made other parents smile, and she had helped Tommy overcome his fear of the dark by teaching him a traditional Mexican lullaby that her own mother had sung to her. "Miss Sarah," Sam interrupted her reverie, tugging on her sleeve, What does kindness mean in your grandmother's language? Sarah smiled, remembering her abuela's weathered hands and gentle voice. Well, mi amor, my grandmother spoke both Spanish and Nahuatl, which is an indigenous language from Mexico. In Spanish, kindness is bondad, or amabilidad, but in Nahuatl, the concept was more complex. She used to say, cualtanalis listli, which means something like, the goodness that comes from the heart. The children attempted to repeat the unfamiliar word, their tongues struggling with the sounds, but their effort was earnest and touching. Sarah helped them break it down syllable by syllable, turning language learning into a game rather than a lesson. Cualtanali listli, they chanted together, giggling at the unfamiliar rhythm of the ancient language. My grandmother used to tell me that this word was special because it meant that kindness wasn't just about being nice on the outside, but about having a heart that naturally wanted to help others feel good. She said you could see cualtanalis listli in someone's eyes before they even spoke or acted. As they continued their morning preparations, Sarah found herself thinking about the various families she had encountered in her 3 years as a nanny in this affluent Connecticut community. Each household had its own rhythm, its own challenges, and its own way of expressing love and care. The Hernandez family, where she had worked weekends for several months, spoke primarily Spanish at home, and Sarah had helped their children maintain their bilingual skills while excelling in their English-speaking school. The Kim family had needed someone who could appreciate their Korean cultural values while helping their twin daughters navigate American social expectations. Each experience had added layers to Sarah's understanding of what it meant to live between cultures, to serve as a bridge between worlds. Miss Sarah, Jake asked as she helped him organize his school papers, do you think the kindness tree story is true? The question caught her off guard, not because it was unexpected. Children often probe the boundaries between reality and story, but because of its deeper implications. At 8, Jake was beginning to develop the critical thinking skills that would serve him well, but he was also at an age where he needed to believe in the possibility of goodness in the world. What do you think, mijo? She replied, using the term of endearment that had become natural with all the children. Do you think kindness can grow like a tree when people from different places and languages all take care of it? Jake considered this seriously, his brow furrowed in concentration. Well, I know the tree with all the different fruits isn't real. But I think the kindness part is real. Like how you take care of us even though you're from a different place and speak a different language first. And how Mrs. Peterson next door always waves at us even though she speaks funny because she's from Germany. Sarah felt a warm surge of pride and affection. This was exactly what she hoped the children would understand. That the literal details of a story might be fictional, but the truths it contained were real and applicable to their lives. You're absolutely right, mi amor. The kindness tree lives wherever people choose to take care of each other, especially when they're different from each other. It grows in our kitchen every morning when we sit together and share breakfast. It grows at your school when you help a classmate who doesn't speak English very well yet. It grows in our community when people like your parents hire people like me and treat us like family. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the school bus, its familiar yellow bulk visible through the kitchen window. The morning's peaceful rhythm suddenly accelerated into the controlled chaos of departure. Backpacks grabbed, lunch boxes secured, quick hugs exchanged, and final reminders called out as 4 boys tumbled toward the door. Remember, Sarah called after them in both languages, required an S or amables. Remember to be kind. We will. They chorused back, their voices already distant as they clattered down the front walkway. And then, suddenly, the house was quiet. Sarah stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of the morning's activity, crumbs on the counter, milk glasses in the sink, a forgotten toy truck under the table. But instead of feeling overwhelmed by the cleanup ahead, she felt grateful for the fullness of it all. This was her life now, woven into the daily fabric of an American family while still honoring the threads of her own heritage. She began the familiar ritual of post-breakfast cleanup, her movements efficient and practiced. As she worked, she thought about the afternoon ahead. Tommy had a doctor's appointment, Sam needed help with a science project, and Jake had requested another Spanish lesson so he could surprise his friend Carlos with a conversation in his native language. The house phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mrs. Thompson, calling from her business trip in Seattle. Good morning, Sarah. How did breakfast go? Any major disasters I should know about? Sarah laughed, settling into the easy rapport they had developed. Buenos dias, Mrs. Thompson. No disasters, just the usual. Jake asked about the kindness tree story again, and Michael managed to keep most of his oatmeal in the bowl instead of on his shirt. That's progress. Mrs. Thompson's voice carried genuine warmth despite the distance. Sarah, I wanted to ask you something. David and I have been talking, and we'd love for you to consider staying with us long-term. I know you've been planning to finish your teaching degree, but we wondered if you might be interested in a more permanent arrangement. We could help with tuition, and you could continue your studies while working with us. The offer wasn't entirely unexpected. The Thompson family had hinted at wanting her to stay, but hearing it stated so directly made Sarah's heart race with possibility and uncertainty in equal measure. That's very generous, Mrs. Thompson. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. But Sarah, I want you to know that you've become so much more than an employee to us. You've enriched our family in ways we never anticipated. The boys adore you, and honestly, David and I have learned so much from watching how you approach childcare and cultural exchange. You have a gift. After the call ended, Sarah sat at the kitchen island where she had shared countless meals and stories with the children, pondering this unexpected turn in her life's path. She had always imagined herself in a traditional classroom, teaching groups of children about literature and language. But perhaps this was its own form of education, intimate, personal, and deeply impactful. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother in San Antonio. ¿Cómo estás, mija? How are you, my daughter? Thinking of you today. Sarah typed back. Bien, mama. Thinking about the future and feeling grateful for where I am now. The response came quickly. Your abuela always said that sometimes the path we think we're on leads us exactly where we need to be, just not in the way we expected. Trust your heart, mija. As if summoned by thoughts of her grandmother, Sarah found herself reaching for the small wooden box she kept on the kitchen counter. Inside were treasures the children had given her over the years. Hand-drawn pictures, small toys, notes written in careful elementary school handwriting. At the bottom of the box was a photo of her grandmother, holding a young Sarah in her lap, both of them smiling in the garden behind their house in San Antonio. What would you do, abuela? She whispered to the photograph. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice, speaking in the mixture of Spanish and Nahuatl that had been her trademark. Mija, you plant seeds of kindness wherever you go. Some grow into trees that feed many people. Your work with these niños, these children, is growing a forest of kindness. Don't worry about the name of the job. Worry about the love you put into it. The front door burst open, interrupting her contemplation. Tommy stood in the doorway, backpack askew and face flushed with excitement. Miss Sarah, I forgot to tell you. Mrs. Garcia at school said she wants to meet you because Carlos told her you speak Spanish and you might be able to help with the school's cultural night. Sarah smiled, helping Tommy reorganize his backpack for the second time that morning. Slow down, amor. Tell me what happened. Carlos was telling everyone about how you taught Jake some Spanish words, and Mrs. Garcia heard, and she said the school is having a night where families share their cultures, and they need people who can help translate and explain things, and Carlos said you would be perfect. As Tommy rushed back toward the school bus, Sarah felt a familiar stirring, the same feeling she had experienced when she first decided to work with children, when she first moved to Connecticut, when she first shared the kindness tree story. It was the sensation of opportunities aligning, of purpose revealing itself in unexpected ways. The afternoon passed in its usual rhythm. She picked up the boys from school, listening to their chatter about playground politics and classroom achievements. Tommy's doctor's appointment went smoothly, just a routine checkup that confirmed he was growing well and staying healthy. Sam's science project on solar energy became an impromptu lesson in both English and Spanish scientific vocabulary, as Sarah helped him understand concepts by explaining them in both languages. Miss Sarah, Sam said as they worked together on his poster, why do you know so many words? Because I grew up speaking Spanish with my family, and then I learned English when I came to school. When you know two languages, you have twice as many words to express your thoughts and feelings. It's like having a bigger toolbox for building ideas. That's cool. Can you teach me more Spanish words for science things? This led to an impromptu lesson where they labeled all the science project components in both languages, turning homework into a cross-cultural learning experience that engaged Sam far more than the original assignment had. As evening approached and Mr. Thompson returned from work, the family gathered around the kitchen table for dinner. This had become Sarah's favorite time of day, the moment when everyone reconvened to share their experiences and reconnect after hours apart. "So, Mr. Thompson said, settling into his chair with the satisfied sigh of someone glad to be home, I heard from Mom that there might be some exciting opportunities coming up." The boys immediately perked up with interest. "What opportunities, Dad?" Jake asked. "Well, it seems like Miss Sarah might be getting more involved with your school's cultural programs. And there might be some changes to how our family works together." Sarah appreciated how the Thompsons always included the children in discussions that affected the household. Rather than making decisions about her role without consulting the boys, they treated them as stakeholders in the family dynamic. "Are you going to stay with us forever, Miss Sarah?" Michael asked, his 4-year-old directness cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "I don't know about forever, M.I. Pequeno, but I'm thinking about staying for a long time." "Would you like that?" The chorus of "yes" from all 4 boys was immediate and enthusiastic, making Sarah laugh and feel simultaneously touched and overwhelmed by their affection. "But," she continued, "staying would mean some changes. I would keep taking care of you and being part of our family, but I would also go back to school sometimes to learn more about teaching. And I might help other families and children in our community too. Like being a teacher for lots of kids instead of just us." Tommy asked. "Something like that. I would still be here for you, but I would also share what I've learned with other people." Mr. Thompson nodded approvingly. "We think Miss Sarah has developed some special skills in helping children from different backgrounds learn and grow together. The school district has been looking for people who can help with their English language learner programs and cultural integration initiatives." As they continued their dinner conversation, Sarah felt the pieces of her future beginning to arrange themselves into a pattern she hadn't anticipated but that felt remarkably right. Instead of leaving this family to pursue traditional teaching, she could expand her role to serve more children while maintaining the relationships that had become so meaningful to her. After dinner, as they settled into the living room for what the family called story time, Sarah found herself thinking about how to tell the kindness tree story with this new perspective. The children gathered around her on the couch, their faces expectant and eager. "Tonight," she announced, "I want to tell you a new chapter of the kindness tree story." "A new chapter?" Jake asked excitedly. "What happens next?" "Well," Sarah began, settling into the storytelling rhythm that had become second nature. "Remember how the tree grew all different kinds of fruit because it had been cared for by people from many different places?" The boys nodded, already caught up in the familiar magic of narrative. "One day, a teacher walked by the tree. She had been looking everywhere for a way to help children in her school learn to understand each other better. Some of her students spoke only English, some spoke only Spanish, some spoke only Chinese, and some spoke languages she had never heard before." "Like the tree," Sam interrupted, making the connection. "Exactly like the tree. The teacher tasted one piece of fruit from the tree, and suddenly she could understand what all her students needed, no matter what language they spoke. But more importantly, she understood that she couldn't help all these children by herself." Sarah paused, looking around at the 4 attentive faces surrounding her. "So do you know what she did?" She asked the tree if she could take some seeds to plant new kindness trees at the school, and in other neighborhoods, and anywhere children needed to learn that being different was something beautiful, not something scary. "And the tree said yes?" Michael asked. "The tree said more than yes. The tree said, take as many seeds as you need, but remember, each seed needs to be planted by someone who understands that kindness grows best when it's shared between people who are different from each other. You can't grow a kindness tree by yourself. You need helpers from many places, speaking many languages, bringing many gifts." As Sarah continued this new chapter, she realized she was narrating not just a story, but a vision of her own future. The teacher in the story wasn't just a character, she was a possibility, a role Sarah could grow into while honoring everything she had learned from her time with the Thompson family. So the teacher took the seeds, but she also asked some of the people who had helped grow the original tree to come with her. The Chinese girl who had brought water became a volunteer at the school library, reading stories in Mandarin to children who missed hearing their home language. The Arabic boy who had shared his lunch started a program where families from different countries brought traditional foods to share. The boys listened intently, occasionally asking questions or making observations that showed they understood the deeper meanings woven into the narrative. The Vietnamese grandmother taught children how to tend a school garden, speaking softly in her native language while students learned that growing things requires patience and daily care. The Portuguese construction worker helped build playground equipment that included words of welcome in many languages. What about the person who spoke sign language? Jake asked, remembering details from previous tellings. Yes. The teenager who spoke ASL started a club where hearing and deaf children learned to communicate with their hands as well as their voices. She taught them that there are many ways to share thoughts and feelings, and that everyone has something important to say. As the story continued, Sarah found herself describing not just an imaginary school, but a vision of community that felt both aspirational and achievable. It was a place where difference was celebrated rather than merely tolerated, where children learned not just academic subjects but the deeper curriculum of empathy and understanding. And what happened to the original kindness tree? Tommy asked. It kept growing, of course. But now it wasn't alone. There were kindness trees in schools and libraries and community centers, all connected by roots that ran underneath the ground, sharing nutrients and support with each other. People discovered that when you plant kindness in one place, it spreads naturally to other places, carried by the people who have tasted its fruit. As story time concluded and the boys began their evening routines of baths and teeth brushing, Sarah helped with the familiar choreography of bedtime preparation. But tonight, instead of feeling like she was simply completing tasks, she felt like she was participating in something larger, the daily work of nurturing human beings who would carry forward the lessons of kindness and understanding into their own futures. When the last child had been tucked into bed and the house had settled into nighttime quiet, Sarah sat down with the Thompsons to discuss the possibilities that lay ahead. "I've been thinking about your offer," she told them, "and about what Mrs. Garcia at the school said about cultural night. I think I'm ready to say yes to staying, but with some modifications." Mrs. Thompson, who had returned from her business trip that afternoon, leaned forward with interest. "What kind of modifications?" "I want to finish my teaching degree, but I also want to develop a program that brings together everything I've learned here with you and the boys. I'd like to create a curriculum that helps families like yours, families with resources and opportunities, connect meaningfully with families from different cultural and economic backgrounds." Sarah paused, organizing her thoughts carefully. "I've realized that the kindness tree story isn't just for children. Adults need to learn these lessons too. We need programs that help people understand that cultural exchange benefits everyone involved, not just the people who need help." Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "You mean creating opportunities for genuine relationship and mutual learning, rather than just charity or volunteer work?" "Exactly. I want to help develop programs where families can learn from each other, where your boys can practice their Spanish with children whose families are learning English, where parents can share different approaches to childcare and education, where everyone involved gains something valuable." The conversation continued late into the evening, touching on practical details of schedules and responsibilities, but also exploring the deeper vision Sarah was articulating. By the time they said goodnight, they had outlined a plan that would allow Sarah to complete her degree while developing and piloting innovative programs for cultural exchange and community building. As Sarah prepared for bed in her comfortable apartment above the garage, a space the Thompsons had renovated specifically for her, she felt a deep sense of alignment between her personal values and her professional opportunities. She texted her mother, "I'm staying in Connecticut, Mama, but not just as a nanny. I'm going to be a bridge builder." The response came quickly, "Your abuela is smiling, mija. She always said you had the gift of helping people see the beauty in each other." Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into developing what she had begun calling the Kindness Tree Project. She met with school administrators, community leaders, and other families to explore how her vision might become reality. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Everyone seemed to recognize the need for more meaningful cultural exchange in their increasingly diverse community. The first pilot program launched with the school's cultural night, but it evolved far beyond what anyone had initially imagined. Instead of a single evening of presentations, it became a series of ongoing exchanges where families opened their homes to each other, sharing meals, traditions, and stories. Sarah found herself facilitating conversations between families who might never have met otherwise. She helped translate not just languages, but cultural expectations and social norms. She watched children who had been shy about their accents bloom into confident bilingual communicators. She saw parents discover that their concerns about raising children in a complex world were universal, regardless of their country of origin or economic situation. The Thompson boys became ambassadors for the program, their natural curiosity and Sarah's careful cultivation of empathy making them ideal bridge builders with their peers. Jake started a Spanish conversation club at school. Sam began teaching other children the scientific vocabulary he had learned in 2 languages. Tommy volunteered to help younger students who were learning English, and even 4-year-old Michael learned to say, "welcome," in 6 different languages. "Miss Sarah," Jake said one afternoon as they worked together on homework, "I think our kindness tree is getting really big." Sarah looked around the kitchen where they sat, the same space where she had told the original story years before, but now filled with artwork from children in their exchange programs, thank you notes from participating families, and photographs from cultural events that had brought together dozens of families from across their community. "See, Amor," she replied, "it's getting very big indeed. And the most beautiful part is that it's not just our tree anymore. It belongs to everyone who has helped it grow." As she continued to develop programming and complete her graduate coursework, Sarah often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this unexpected place. She had come to Connecticut thinking she was taking a temporary job to support her dream of becoming a teacher. Instead, she had discovered that teaching could take many forms, and that some of the most important lessons happened not in classrooms, but around kitchen tables, in living rooms, and in the daily interactions between people who chose to see difference as an opportunity rather than a barrier. The Kindness Tree Project continued to expand, attracting attention from educators and community organizations throughout the region. Sarah was invited to speak at conferences, to consult with other communities wanting to develop similar programs, and to write about her experiences for educational publications. But no matter how far her influence spread, the heart of her work remained the same, helping people understand that kindness, care, and love could transcend any barrier of language, culture, or circumstance. It was the lesson her grandmother had taught her in Nahuatl, the truth she had discovered in the Thompson family kitchen, and the gift she was now sharing with a growing community of families who had learned to see the world through each other's eyes. Qualitatively, she would whisper sometimes, when she watched children from different backgrounds playing together without concern for their differences, or when she saw parents sharing parenting strategies despite barely speaking the same language, or when she felt the deep satisfaction of work that honored both her heritage and her adopted home. The goodness that comes from the heart, it had become not just a concept, but a way of life, a professional mission, and a daily practice. And like the mythical kindness tree in her stories, it continued to grow, nourished by the care of many hands and the hope of many hearts, producing fruit that could feed anyone who approached it with openness and wonder. In the end, Sarah realized, the most important language of all was the one that required no words, the language of kindness that spoke directly from heart to heart, building bridges wherever it was practiced with intention and love.